Tom Homan, he wants action. He is really, really, really upset about all of these sanctuary cities. And he's like, you know, you guys can't have these sanctuary cities here in America because that is a direct violation of federal law. And by the way, there is that little thing called the Supremacy Clause. We've been through it here on the show that says you can't have these sanctuary cities, or if you're going to have them and the feds decide they're going to come in and they want to arrest people, guess what? They can. Because they trump, no pun intended, whatever's going on the local level. He wants action. He wants criminal arrests. Watch.
Well, I want to day one. You can we'll move to the congressman, but just to finish the point here, when you look at the investigations, it's a lot of critics of Donald Trump and Democrats. Can you think of or name any public official or individual who's in these crosshairs other than those folks? I've got some up on the screen. It goes from Cuomo to Comey to Springsteen at this point.
Those who break the law should be prosecuted. And I don't know if any of these people have been prosecuted. That list I'm looking at the screen now, if any of them people have been prosecuted other than the congresswoman and other than two judges that impeded ICE and try to harbor and conceal an illegal alien and impede their enforcement efforts. So, no, that list shows I can't see everybody on that list, but are you telling me everybody on the list has been indicted?
No, it says investigations.
They'll be indicted or arrested if they violate the law.
No, it's investigations, but the fact that so many in these first 110 days, some of them which are announced on social media or other avenues before the defendants or even read their rights and given information, raises the question that it looks like to some that this is political targeting. The ACLU says it's autocratic targeting. And you respond tonight by saying, well, they did it. The Democrats did it. Well, if they did it, that's your view? Does that make it okay? That's what I'm asking.
I said, wait a minute. I said I find it shocking that they would accuse the Trump administration of weaponizing against their opponents when they did the exact thing during the Biden administration. I'm not making any comparison. I'm just saying I find it shocking for them to make that claim when they did it for 4 years. I'm not making any claim we're weaponizing anything. I don't think President Trump's weaponizing anything against his political opponents. We're enforcing the law. We're investigating crimes. If there's evidence that a crime has been acted upon, then they need to be charged. No one's, in the last 4 years, we heard no one's above the law. We're either our members of Congress, either our judges, and either our other people. You cross the line, you violate the law, you should be indicted. You should be charged.
So I know you brought up Congressman McIver. I said I'd give you time on that. The reports here that part of the narrative...
Like, how is it so hard to understand, right? Like, if you have laws and you break them, why should you not be prosecuted for them? I mean, there are things that are coming up. The president has called into question, for example, Bruce Springsteen, Oprah Winfrey, Beyonce, in terms of some of the fees that they were paid. He's alleging Beyonce got $11 million from the Kamala Harris campaign. The New York Times has reported that Oprah Winfrey's company got $2.5 million for that little, God knows what, that little seminar that they had with Meryl Streep and a few others. And Springsteen was paid a lot of money. And so the president is questioning whether that was a violation of FEC rules. And so if it is, then, obviously that's a problem, because if you're doing something illegally, and I'm not suggesting they are, but if they were, then they should be prosecuted for that. Just like, for example, La Monica. I had to go there. La Monica. I mean, if you're LaMonica MacGyver and you decide, the representative from New Jersey, to go show up unannounced at the Delancey Detention Center outside Newark, New Jersey, and you see her there in red, and then you start fighting with ICE officers who tell you to go home and that you can't be there, and then you all of a sudden start, pushing yourself up against them, as you're about to see in this videotape. And apparently, according to DHS, they have even more videotape of this. If you're seemingly like body slamming people or being extremely aggressive in some of your words, then you know what, you're going to have a problem. Here we go. I think this is the particular scene. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you for that. Yeah, take a look. Okay, so she's getting kind of into it. It's getting physical. Like, that's not okay. All right, like I don't know in which world that is ever okay. And so to Tom Homan's point, like if you're doing something illegal, this is law and order, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Haba said you had declined every opportunity to come to a resolution. You said they wanted you to...
We'll go back to that in a second. Okay, so law and order. Law and order. Tom Homan, that's all he's asking for. I don't think that's asking for much. I think that's kind of just basic stuff. Alina Haba, in her case, she followed through with charges on La Monica, and potentially she's apparently talking to Bonnie Coleman. We'll see what happens there with the other congresswoman. We did not see Bonnie Coleman, however, physically, moving her body up against the ICE agent. She was charged with violating Title 18 U.S. Code Section 111A1 for assault and also for impeding and interfering with law enforcement. Now, by the way, this carries up to 7 years in prison and penalties of, up to somewhere around $250K if she is indeed found guilty of this. She seems to think, again, that she's doing nothing wrong. She's just doing her job. And I think this is why you need sort of the voice of reason, whether it be a Donald Trump or just a Tom Homan out there saying, hey, you do something illegal, we're going to actually follow up on that. And this is what these people, some of them on the left, simply do not understand.
Well, Haba said you had declined every opportunity to come to a resolution. You said they wanted you to admit to something you didn't do. What did they want you to admit to?
I mean, there was a lot. We've had a week of back and forth with them, and I will say that I did not waver. I showed up there to do my job, and she wanted me to admit to doing things, all of these different lists of things that she said that I did.
Like what?
I mean, from things of impeding,
Yeah, like impeding, which is what you were doing.
There were some other things in there that she put in there, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But she wanted me to admit to these things, sign an agreement to them, and I'm not doing that, because it's not true. And there was a lot of back and forth and just tenseness, all week from her and from her office. And so at the end of the day, once again, showed up to do my job, and I don't need to apologize for doing that. That is what the people of New Jersey expect for me to do. The 744,000, almost close to 800,000 people I represent, and why should we apologize about doing our job when ICE and Homeland Security created that environment?
I'm sorry. How is this doing your job? I'm going back to what Tom Homan's saying, because how is that doing your job? That is not doing your job. Doing your job would be calling up, making an appointment, acting in a orderly fashion, not doing this, not starting some kind of riot. That is not doing your job. That is not what the people of New Jersey expect from you, okay? And this is, yes, why you're being charged with violating Title 18 U.S. Section Code 111A1. The president said it. He knew what she was up to.
Oh, give me a break. Did you see her? She was out of control. Did you those days are over. The days of woke. The days of woke. No, I didn't. The days of woke are over. That woman, I have no idea who she is. That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over in this country. We're going to have law and order.
Law and order, okay, which is why Alina's going after her. This is all, mind you, about the Delancey Immigration Detention Center, where they're mad because they're arresting people that they believe to be criminals that are also here illegally. And so they don't want that to happen. And this is disturbing in and of itself, right? Why is it that you guys want people that are criminals here running around illegally? Again, I go back to Homan.
First of all, how many illegal aliens I think in the United States? At least 20 million. Here's where'd you come up with that number? We've been speaking about 12 million for 20 years. We know we got 10.5 that we know of came to the border. How many don't we know of? I talked about known gotaways at 2 million. How many unknown gotaways we have? Like between the Big Bend sector in Texas, where there's no technology, how many 1,000 people dig across there? We wouldn't know. We would know now. But so I would venture over 20 million. But your question is, last count last I looked, there was about 700,000 illegal aliens with criminal charges walking the streets of this country. 700,000. And that's what we're looking for now. That's what we're prioritizing. Them and national security threats.
Yeah. And by the way, a few years ago, this was not that radical. A few years ago, Obama was deporting people A few years ago, Hillary Clinton was saying we can't have open borders. I mean, you go back 20 years, the late Dianne Feinstein was saying we can't be the welfare system for Mexico. Well, we still can't be the welfare system for Mexico. But don't tell AOC.
If anyone's breaking the law in this situation, it's not members of Congress, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's people like Tom Homan and Secretary Kristi Noem. You lay a finger on them, we are going to have a problem.
Oh, boy. Well, you know what? You're not going to intimidate this guy.
First of all, you can't intimidate me. Come on, give me a break. You know, I was enforcing him. I was wearing a green uniform, Border Patrol agent, for 5 years before she was even born. I had more than 3 decades enforcing immigration law before she became a member of Congress. I worked for 6 presidents. I've seen policies. I've seen hundreds of policies. Some worked, some didn't. But you can't deny the success of the Trump administration when it comes to border security. Again, the most secure border in the history of this nation. And I said from day one, and she knows this, you can not support ICE. Shame on you. You can support sanctuary cities. Shame on you. But you can't cross the line. You can't knowingly impede ICE law enforcement officers. That is a felony. You can't harbor and conceal, knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien from ICE. That is a felony. And you certainly can't commit criminal trespass. You know, and as far as New York, her district, this administration has done more to protect her district than she has. The number of criminal aliens we took off the streets of New York made her community much safer. She ought to be thanking the members of this administration, the men and women of ICE, who protect this country and make her community safer. So, you know, it's politics over public safety. It's just ridiculous. She ought to love her community more than she hates Trump, because we're doing a lot to protect her community.
You better believe he is. Anyway, she doesn't know what's going on. AOC seems to think she's going to be getting arrested. She may well be, right? Because this is what Homan is calling for. He's like, we can't have lawmakers that are trying to impede law enforcement. She's out there doing social media things where she's telling people how to avoid ICE, et cetera, et cetera. And so now, according to the latest and greatest this week, there on the Hill, a reporter approached her saying, hey, do you think you're going to be investigated? Has the DOJ told you anything yet? And she's responding with no. You know, and by the way, this is just my First Amendment right, I don't know. I mean, I'm with Tom on this one. Charlotte, thank you for your generosity. I'm really with Tom on this one because my belief is that you've got to actually think about the greater good of the country and the federal government and the importance of what the federal government has to do in this moment in time. So it is about to get ugly, ladies and gentlemen, in more ways than one. But I think a lot of the border stuff that he put into play, Biden put into play, all that's going to get reversed. One, because it will be under Donald Trump, but also because of, think about what we led with, all of those auto pen signatures now coming into question. Look, this DHS means business. You get the DHS basically saying, hey, we call the shots when it comes to the borders. And now Kristi Noem, Ice Barbie, as they like to call her, she's really pretty. The joke is like, you know, some guys just want to pretend they're illegal so that they can get arrested by Ice Barbie, Kristi Noem. Anyway, Kristi was on Fox yesterday, and look, she's got a warning. She came out, and she just skewered Harvard University. So yesterday, Harvard University found out that all of its students that were here on certain student visas were going to have to be sent home. They said, you cannot enroll these kids. We are revoking your privilege to have these student visas at Harvard. Well, for Harvard, that's 27% of their student body. So, you know, that's kind of going to be a little bit painful for them because those are the kids that are actually apparently paying the full boat. So there are, you know, a lot of Chinese wealthy people that are going to Harvard and they're paying the full tuition. And Harvard has plenty of money, but, you know, it's always willing to take a dime more, I guess. Here is Kristi sending that message to Harvard and universities everywhere.
Some of these universities have even barred law enforcement officers from coming on campus and haven't even allowed there to be basic law and order on the areas that they're responsible for. So we're going to continue to do our investigations and make sure that what the Department of Homeland Security is responsible for, it will be done with integrity for the way that Congress laid out that programs should work and the opportunities that we have to allow people to come into this country, learn, and to be a part of a country that promotes freedom and liberty and that everybody is equal. That's not what Harvard is doing, and that's not what we're seeing in some of these college campuses.
Could you foresee, or are you now considering similar moves with other universities like Columbia that has allowed Jewish students to be threatened and made unsafe?
Absolutely. We are absolutely, this should be a warning to every other university to get your act together. Get your act together, because we are coming to make sure that these programs, that you are facilitating an environment where students can learn, where they're safe, and that they're not discriminated against based on their race or their religion. Anti-Semitism will not be stood for, and any participation with a country or an entity or a terrorist group that hates America and perpetuates this kind of violence, we will stop it, and we will not allow that to happen, especially in places where our kids need to grow up and really learn what this country is about, what the world is about, and what it means to promote freedom and liberty.
There's a bit.
Yeah, it's amazing because these universities have gotten away with so much for so long in such a sort of crazy way. I mean, the DEI stuff, right? The Harvard got called up all the way to the Supreme Court, right? Because they were like openly discriminating against Asian students because they wanted more black students. And so they were totally changing the criteria based on your skin color, which actually would be a violation, right? Again, of the Constitution, because you're not allowed to do that. And in this administration, you're definitely not allowed to do that. So Kristi Noem went to Harvard and she asked for a bunch of information, and she did not get this information. It was actually kind of simple stuff. Let's take a look at Kristi's letter here, and I'm going to read some of it to you because this is actually really important and relevant. She said, she wanted some information about the DEI policies, but they refused to provide it. So, quote, as a result of your refusal to comply with multiple requests to provide the Department of Homeland Security pertinent information while perpetuating an unsafe campus environment that is hostile to Jewish students, promotes pro-Hamas sympathies, and employs racist diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, you have lost this privilege. In other words, I can't have any more foreigners at your university, so that's going to really suck for your Harvard, given that 27% of the student body comes from overseas. She's revoking, she said, the student and exchange visitor program certification, meaning that Harvard is prohibited from having any aliens on F or J non-immigrant status visas for 25-26 academic school year. This decertification also means that existing aliens on F or J non-immigrant status must transfer to another university in order to maintain their non-immigrant status, or else they're out. I mean, hardball, okay? This administration is playing hardball. Harvard, you don't want to give us the information that we're just asking you for? It's not a big deal. They just asked for a little bit of information. Harvard didn't want to turn it over because Harvard thinks it's like, a country unto itself. Well, guess what? Your status is provided by way of the U.S. government, not to mention all the taxpayer dollars that are going to fund Harvard University, believe it or not, federal dollars. That's all going to change. It is changing. So just to keep you completely up to date, and in the moment, as I said, Harvard would take a huge financial hit. We'll see how this all plays out. I do think once again, you get the Trump administration with the law on their side. However, moments ago, just as we came to air, there is a judge. They do the judge shopping. You knew they would, right? Harvard immediately sued the administration. And so now the judge is saying, you can't do this. You can't do this. Well, I have a feeling the administration is going to say, oh, yes, we can. And we will. If you will not provide us information on the foreign students that you have let in, if we cannot verify that they are upstanding members of society that are not going to be pro-Hamas or endanger the lives of the Jewish students on campus or threaten anyone, then we don't know who they are. We're not going to allow you to give out those visas. It's gone. It's being revoked. Done. I mean, amazing. I'll tell you, you know what? He had 4 years to think about things. Everyone had 4 years to think about things, and now they're coming back with a vengeance. So this is a very different kind of administration than you saw first time around. First time around, he went in there, eyes wide open, tried to do the best job he could, did a great job, right? The economy was terrific up until March 2020. Everything was going well. You had the biggest boost in median incomes that you had seen since, well, going all the way back to the 1950s. We had GDP growing. Everything was swimming along just beautifully. We had peace in the world. And then, well, given what they did, he decided he can't go back and play Mr. Nice Guy. And so he's armed with people, smart people, lots of lawyers who are ready, willing, and able to take this on in a huge way.